Hi everyone, my name is Nyandia.
And I'm Rachel, and welcome to the She Says podcast.
We are part of She Says, a global network of over 60,000 women in more than 50 cities around the world.
She Says is committed to being a real voice for creative women.
And on this podcast, we will be exploring the ebbs and flows of being a creative woman in Kenya.
Our goal is to connect Kenyan creative women, give them a voice, and co-create with the She Says Global Network.
Hey Rachel.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good, how are you?
Pretty good.
Who are we talking to today?
Today we're talking to Kanyi Ohawa.
Kanyi is a good old friend of mine. I've actually known her for a long time. Our parents actually are friends, so I have a personal history with her. I'm actually excited to hear about her creative journey. You know, she's actually the CEO of All and Sundry Limited, which is a bespoke design house that specializes in graphic design, branding, custom gifting, custom invites for weddings and corporate events. So this should be an interesting conversation.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to hearing her story because I've seen some of her stuff on Instagram, but I can't wait.
Yeah. Let's get into it. Hi, Kanyi. Welcome to She Says podcast. We want to start off this morning with tell us who you are. Who are you? What does it mean to be creative? Do you consider yourself a creative person? And what does creativity mean to you?
Thanks for having me.
No, you're most welcome.
My name is Kanyi, like you said. I like to think I'm a creative. On my bad days, I think I'm a fraud. I run a graphic design company called All and Sundry Limited. Basically, what we do is we give creative solutions in graphic design, branding, and bespoke stationery. Bespoke stationery is invitations, anything that works with paper because I love paper. I'm also a watercolorist. I love to paint. I love to just express the beauty of creation through my work. That's who I am in a nutshell. I'm married. I've got 4 children who I'm happy to say I have, managed to not kill them before they were adults.
Not just 4 kids. I think you have 4 amazing kids.
I do. I have 4 amazing kids. They're very talented. They're amazing people. I love to spend time with them.
Yeah. How old are they?
So my youngest is turning 13 and my oldest is turning 21.
Oh, nice.
I have a girl and 3 boys.
How did we get here?
I know. Time flies.
What does creativity mean to you?
Wow, that's it's such an abstract question because creativity, there's so many ways that you can describe creativity. For some people, it's visual. For some people, it's auditory. For some people, it's texture. For me, creativity is, I think, a mix of all of that. And creativity for me is an expression. I know people who are very creative in the way they think. Yeah. What makes it creative is in just the unique way that they do it. Yeah, or in the way they problem solve, in the way they express things. Like for me, creativity is like how I express myself visually, like in my work. I consider that creativity. There are people who you can have conversations with them, and man, those conversations are just off the hook because of how creative they feel. So there's so many ways of expressing creativity. It's difficult to actually pin it down to one, basic statement.
Yeah. No, that's quite it's a good observation because obviously creativity covers so many spaces, but it's always good to hear what your perspective is on creativity. Did you realize the moment where you're like, oh, I'm a creative person? Was there a moment? And when that moment came, did you have support? Like for the next step? And what was the next step?
Okay, so I'm going to try and answer this question in a way that I don't make my folks upset with me. But I think I always knew I was a creative. It's not something that one day, I think when I went to high school is when I thought, okay, so this is a thing. Yeah, that you're considered creative. But for me, it was always natural because I remember even being in standard 3, Standard 4, sketching in my books, which used to annoy my dad to no end. I would sketch these pictures of women, and I would do house plants, and I would do all sorts of things in my textbooks. Yeah. I think the annoying part for him was because I was supposed to actually be doing something else in class. And when I finished primary school, I realized that I really just wanted to paint. I just wanted to paint. There's something about when I'd watch someone else painting and I'd feel like I'd have an almost out of body experience.
Wow.
You know? And when I went to high school, I had this amazing fine art teacher. He's called Mr. Okanga. That guy made me who I am because he just completely embraced what I had and encouraged it and made me feel like I'm special because of it.
Yeah.
And then I found a community of people who are like me.
Yeah.
And that was the most amazing thing. So I basically put my 110% into that. Yeah, now this is the part where we disagreed with my parents, because my parents were of the opinion that perhaps I should put the same effort into everything else, which I disagreed with. And so we had some, back and forth around that. And I finally got into university where I studied. I studied a degree in fine art. I was very stubborn about doing what I wanted to do, so I was hard to beat. So did I get support? I basically manipulated and got everyone on board with my vision.
I like it. I think it's very interesting how, because like when you were talking about sketching in your books, I was just thinking about how every lesson for me was a search for a diagram. So like I was really good at geography if all I had to do was draw the faulty, you know how we had to do those diagrams of the earth and like the different segments, like my diagrams were to die for. But do I remember any geography? Zero. But I had the best pie charts. So anyway, that's pretty cool. Interesting.
Did you have any, for example, like you said, in high school is where you kind of started to nurture that creativity. Did you have any peers around you who were the same? Or did you find that you were like alone in that whole sketching in your notebook during class? Or
I was very lucky that I went to a school where creativity was actually nurtured. And so I found an entire community. I found people who were ahead of me, who were very, very good. I wanted to be like them when I grew up. You know, we had people who were dramatists, we had musicians, we had fine artists, very good fine artists. So I just felt, I got into high school and I got into this school and I just felt like something just clicked. You know, I found my niche and it was amazing.
Yay, awesome. When you get out of high school, do you go into school higher learning for creativity, or do you become something else and then become what you are today, or did you go straight into a creative study?
So I did a degree in fine art from Kenyatta University. And I should mention my high school because, man, that was Kenya High School, the Kenya High School. I went to KU and did a degree in fine art. Now, I feel like at some point and this is something that I was getting also from, it was feedback from my environment, basically, that, you know, artists don't make it. You need to do something serious. You know, you can do better. You know, art is for people who can't find anything else to do, you know. And I think that kind of internalized for me quite a bit, so that by the time I was finishing, I was certain that I was not going to make a living out of fine art. And for me, the second best thing was actually graphic design. So when I finished, I ended up working for a graphic design house where I basically taught myself, because by the time I was going through university, we were not really doing anything like digitally. Everything we were doing was manual. And so I basically taught myself on the job how to use computers, graphic design software, actually talked myself into that job without really knowing what I was doing. And then had a very steep learning curve to learn. Luckily, I was probably the best at it, even if my skill level was extremely low. Yeah, so I guess I had some shift from what I really wanted to do to what I ended up doing. And the amazing thing is I'm now back to what I really wanted to do. I mean, I'm painting the most amazing stuff right now,
Right.
and I feel like I'm just living my purpose.
There's something that you said that really resonates with me as well, because it's that whole idea of, because I used to love painting as well, but it's growing up thinking that's not a real career to pursue. So what's the most acceptable creative, something that will make you money? And that's, I feel like that's how I ended up as well in graphic design. Not that I don't love it, but I do love it. But it's like you just reminded me how much I used to also love painting. But that to me was always like, my parents will accept if I'm a graphic designer, but if I tell them I want to do fine art painting, then the questions would come, but how will you make money? What will you be doing? So it's like,
Exactly.
right.
And the thing is, and as a parent, I now get it, because I have some of my kids want to do things that I'm not clear about the career path. And I can see where they were coming from at the time, because for this creative, especially in this country, you find the creative careers do not have clear career paths.
Right.
Yeah. If, say, someone wants to be an accountant or a lawyer or a doctor, it's very clear. You're going to finish high school, you're going to go to medicine school, you're going to get a degree in this, you're going to specialize like this. It's very, very clear. But in a creative business, there are no clear career paths.
Right.
And so as a parent, I think you feel you've got that sense of, you're worried that your child will end up in a dead end something.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of work there that needs to be done, because in as much as I think I'm a liberal thinker, I
Yeah.
find that like for instance, my son is pursuing boxing as a career.
Right. And you're like,
I struggled with that, man. I was like, I don't see the path here, and can we just kind of
Or
like
never
have a
there is
plan?
a path.
Yeah, so I kind of I understand now as a parent where they were coming from.
but I
So
also
I don't hold grudges about it.
Yeah.
I love that you're saying that right after you told us how the type of support you got, but it's like now you're seeing it from a parent's perspective. And it
Yeah.
must be like really wild to kind of have those two
Right.
perspectives and still be, like you said, liberal and open enough for you to be like, you can do what you want to do. But it's like, oh no.
Very exciting stuff.
Right.
Obviously, I feel that your choice in career was a passion choice. But I'm also curious, how does this experience you had in the graphic design house influence who you are today as a creative, and how did it lead you from there to this?
I think for me, because I was, I already knew who I was supposed to be on the inside. I was very clear that the graphic design was kind of something that I was doing. And by the way, don't get me wrong, I love graphic design. I love the process of creating identities for people. And I love the idea, the process of actually being able to get something. So for me, I think for the jobs, I was lucky to get jobs that were still in the creative space, so that I feel like what I did is I just layered my skill levels. Yeah. I always know that I'm a fine artist at heart, but the graphic design gave me a different facet of how I can actually use my graphic design. And for me, that was I don't see it as a waste of time.
Yeah.
I actually see it as an enriching of who I am as a creative. And so I know at the beginning, and this came because of lack of wisdom, I used to feel a lot of maybe resentment that I was not doing the thing that I was supposed to be doing. But over time, I realized that actually in everything I was doing, I was heading to where I am right now.
Right.
Wow.
And it just makes me a much better creative than I was previously.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
In your opinion, what would a better creative Kenya look like for you?
Gosh, this question would need like a week to answer. The short version is, first of all, my entire experience in education, in creative, has been in this country. So I am 100% a product of the Kenyan environment. But I think maybe this is where the government is coming with the CBC, though maybe implementation is a problem. And I don't want it to become a political conversation, but these are my personal opinions. That the idea is to be able to identify creatives from a very early age.
Mm.
Yeah. I think that learning is done in different ways for different people. Creatives have a particular way that they learn. Yeah. And it doesn't mean that you have to dump everything else, but you really have to factor in a creative in the process. The way our educational system was designed was that creatives kind of they fell through the cracks.
Right.
Because the standard of measure was for academic excellence. Yeah. And creatives generally kind of struggle with that, especially if they're not living their purpose. You find that they struggle with the academics also. Also, children generally learn by doing.
Right.
And I found that our system is very academic, it's very theoretical. So there's something that people lose out on when they're not doing, and they're just learning theoretically. And creativity, you can't do it. It's not theory. You cannot do it theoretically. Yeah. So I think one, identify creatives very early in the process. And I think CBC will, once it's running properly, will actually do that. Yeah. Two, find different ways of evaluating children, and especially creatives. Okay. Three, create the industries and the jobs for them. Yeah. And they exist. It's just that they're not what do you call it? They're not acknowledged. Because if you think about it, if you remove creatives from, let's say, the Kenyan economy, it means you remove graphic designers, you remove product designers, you remove musicians who create ads and jingles and stuff like that, you remove visual artists, you remove digital artists. We would have a very gray, drab place, and we would not be able to sell ourselves.
Yeah.
Right.
So create the space and acknowledge them. Yeah. Two, create the platforms. Have the schools that people can actually specialize in some of these things. Right now, as we are, you cannot find good graphic design graphic design, there are a couple, but they're private. Yeah. Fine art is, I think you only get fine art like at the Kenyatta University and at BIFA and maybe one or two other places. Yeah. There are people across the country who do not have access to these schools.
Right.
So have in every county, in an ideal situation, I'd imagine having a creative school in every county.
Right.
So that you're capturing the immense talent we have in this country, because we have amazing talent in this country, and give them financial inclusion, which is something that we are working on the side, where as a creative, if you walk into a financial institution and say that you are looking for credit, the first reaction will not be laughter or
Right.
a hard no.
Some respect.
Yes, because your industry is acknowledged, it is understood, and it is appreciated. That's my short answer.
Very short.
I was gonna say this.
Yeah, if we had a week, I'd give you the longer version.
There's one thing that, like, you keep saying things and I'm just like, I get like light bulbs in my head, but it's like, for me, for example, I went to school in the States, and before I went there, I had kind of decided graphic design was what I was going to do. But that was because I was not exposed to how many different versions of ways to be creative and how many design programs there are until I got to like the school where I was. And I literally was shocked at how many things can come out of just being a creative and being a designer that's beyond just visual. Like, we even had equestrian design, which is basically the art of learning how to ride horses and all that. I'm like, can you imagine that level of exposure? And
I know.
You know what's crazy is I'm listening to you guys and I'm thinking about my school experience in the US. And I remember walking into calculus class, knowing that is what is going to stand between my graphic design degree and graduation, right? But then they had hired teachers who were trained, and this is going to your point about acknowledging creatives. They had hired even math teachers whose training allowed them to teach mathematics to creative people. And so our calculus teacher walks in and paints a picture, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I see mathematics. And so I'm really excited by the thought that CDC could be the solution to this conversation about a better Kenyan creative environment.
Oh, that's absolutely true, because there's so many. Can you imagine how many people have died with their gift still in them?
Oh, it's heartbreaking.
Because there was just never any opportunity for them to practice it, because they were never given the option. Yeah. And I think that's why we struggle as a community, because when people are not doing the things they love, there's a lot of pain.
Yes.
And there's a lot of dissatisfaction. And we are not a joyful people.
No. And I mean, and what excites me as we go through this journey, as she says, Kenya, is the possibilities of county to county engagement with creatives. Because you mentioned something that is so heartbreaking when you think that just because I was born in Nakuru, there's no access to an art school. Or because I was born in Pokot, the idea of an art or a creative learning environment is not an option. Like, it's just not an option. And the only way it becomes an option is if you come to Nairobi or you get out of your county. And sometimes when you think about getting out of your county, most of those communities are going to be like, who is going to spend money for you to go and draw? Like, you better go become a doctor. So there's obviously, work to be done on the people in terms of understanding, but there's also a very big need for the government to work on the county presence of how do we nurture these creative spirits that are in this country, because you're right, there's a lot of pain.
There is a lot of pain. And can you imagine how much lost opportunity we have? And I think that's why this is not valued, because no one is thinking about the opportunity cost for us. Maybe the next amazing electrical car, was supposed to be designed by some boy from Pokot.
Yes.
Yeah. Only because there was no school available for him, the opportunity was missed. Yeah. Maybe the next amazing spaceship was supposed to have been designed by a child from Mombasa, but because he did not have access to school and the tools that he would need to do that, opportunity lost. Yeah. If we're going to go to the next level of, let's say, industrialization or development as a country, we really need to factor in how are we nurturing our creatives. Is my thought.
Very true.
Who and what would you say have been your greatest influences throughout your creative journey?
Wow, I have so many. One, there was a lady when I was in primary school. She used to have this show on TV. It was called Paint Along with Nancy. I don't know her.
We shall find.
Never miss that show. But I was always there for it. With my paper and my paints. She taught me how to paint initially. Yeah. Then, and you see how important it is what you actually expose your children to.
Yeah.
Because without that show, maybe it would have taken me another maybe 10 years to discover that I love to paint.
Yeah.
Then there was my art teacher, Mr. Okanga, in high school, who was just amazing. I owe that guy such a debt, for allowing me to explore my creative talent. There was my mom. My mom is an amazing person. She doesn't understand the word impossible. She's got amazing faith, and she's like, if that's what you want to do, then do it.
Yeah.
What's stopping you? Ask God for it and do it.
Yeah.
And then I'm very fortunate to have a group of friends, fellow creatives, who every time when I'm in their space, I just feel refreshed. I feel inspired to do better, and some of them were actually like, if you're narrow-minded, you'd think that, we're business rivals. But what we are is we are creatives on a similar journey. And each one has their way of doing things that is just so unique to them. And those kind of things really feed me, because they just make me want to be better. Yeah. I loved the paintings of Claude Monet. I loved the mind of Da Vinci. And then I'm seriously inspired by nature. Seriously.
Yeah.
I could spend all day just immersed in nature because I feel like everything from interior design to fine art, painting, drawing can be. There's so many examples in within nature. You know, just if you look at the vividness of color, and we're so lucky we live in such a tropical climate that you find all of these things. Just you literally just step out of your door and you find them. You know. And I also love to people watch. I find people very inspiring.
Right.
Entertaining, also very inspiring.
Very entertaining.
Yes.
That's very exciting. I mean, I think nature has to be one of the biggest influences for all of us as creatives, because I find myself like I'll look at someone cut an orange and now I'm studying like the little pieces of pulp inside the orange, and it's no longer an orange to me. It's like a whole, and I can't wait to walk away from that space and go sketch something. And so thank God for nature.
Thank God for nature.
A follow-up question is this is a difficult question for me, I know, to answer, but who have you influenced?
Ooh.
Wow. Gosh. I'd like to think I influence a lot of people. Recently, I started becoming a lot more engaging, like on my social media, and starting to share a lot more of my work, which as a creative can be very difficult sometimes because of imposter syndrome, which I suffer from greatly. And one of the things that I've noticed is from time to time I get inboxes from people telling me, gosh, I was so inspired by what you've done. You know, keep sharing. I also do a lot of I'm what you call an urban gardener. So you know, also on my social media, you'll find a lot of stuff of the stuff that I grow and stuff and flowers. And I get people telling me, oh gosh, I didn't even know I could do this in my small space. Just keep doing it. So I like to think I like to think that I have a very large following of fans who just
I like it.
inspired by me. But also I like to hope that I've inspired my children also. I have very creative children. My daughter Nicole is a musician, which she didn't get from me, and a fine artist, which I'm hoping she got from me, but she's very good. She's actually a lot better than maybe I am. My son Andrew the boxer also draws amazingly. Adrian is a cartoonist, and Nathan, I like to think, is my creative thinker. So I hope that I've inspired my children, and through them I've inspired a lot more children. I also used to run an art and craft class for some children at Kenyatta Hospital, which I saw was very inspiring to them. They used to look forward to the classes because it was a time of just art therapy. You know, so I'm hoping that when I die, there'll be a very large amount of people who just be saying how inspiring I was.
We shall bring them on as guests.
Yeah.
Oh, super awesome. And yes, your daughter, oh my God, she's amazing. Amazing, amazing. So you definitely, I can be a witness and say you've actually influenced, like, if nothing else, your daughter is like all you need. She'll do the rest for you. How do you stay motivated in what you do? Because we've talked about the challenges of being a creative in Kenya. And so I can imagine that there's hurdles along the way. How does Kanyi wake up and do it over and over again in spite of the environment?
I think I would have answered that question differently, maybe 2 or 3 years ago. But now I would say my motivation is in the moment. Yeah. I like to kind of shake off whatever happened yesterday or, you know, the problems, and literally just shift my perspective into the possibilities. You know, what are the possibilities right now? What can I create? You know, and there's sometimes, yes, because I'm a bit of an introvert. It's hard to tell, but I am an introvert. There's sometimes I feel drained. And when those times happen, then I have to go internally. I like to read a lot. I like to watch. Sometimes I'll binge watch shows. And while the show is going on and I'm listening to the storyline, something else is going on in the background for me. You know, I'm looking at the architecture, or I'm looking at something else, and I'm thinking, wow, maybe I can do this and this and this, you know. So I think those are the things that motivate me, that I can literally recreate myself every single moment of every single day.
Very exciting.
Yeah.
And do you have any mentors in your industry right now?
Oh, they might not know that they're my mentors. I follow a number of people. There's a guy called Chris Doe. He has a YouTube channel called The Future. FUTUR.
Yeah.
He has amazing content for creatives and creative businesses and creative thinking. You know, that's my, like, one of my number one mentors. I follow he's called Strive Masiyiwa, because I think as an entrepreneur and someone who's running a business and I want to run it great and clean, he's a really good example of that. I have so many people. There's a guy called Jim Quick, also online. I told you, a lot of my mentors, they don't even know about me.
I don't know. We had a conversation with Rachel a few weeks ago about the same thing, mentorship. And it seems like creative are stalker mentor seekers. Like, we don't commit to, like, you're my mentor, would you be my mentor? It's kind of like, you're my mentor, but you don't know you're my mentor. And I think it's a very common thread. So at least we're confirming we are normal human beings, because we don't have, like, a formal mentor relationship, which is very interesting. I wonder if it has anything to do with being a creative. But anyway.
But I've also found that sometimes, like you said, you have a good, close, creative knit of people. It's almost like you don't realize you're probably mentoring each other, but it's not formally called a mentorship. But it's like the way you guys inspire each other and, like, talk through ideas with each other is a form of mentorship, which I think sometimes we forget to appreciate that as mentorship.
I think that's the most useful type of mentorship, because one, it happens literally every day. Like, I have a really good friend. We talk about, like, the business aspect of our lives a lot. You know, and we call each other out on stuff we said we're going to do and we've not done. Or, you know, when you have a problem, you're able to kind of have someone else look at it from a different perspective, an outsider's perspective, and kind of give you insight that helps you. Yeah. So I think maybe it's the definition. I think what we struggle with maybe as creatives is just the traditional definition of mentorship.
Yes.
That a mentor is someone who you need to have a formal arrangement with. And maybe that doesn't really work for us.
Right. But also the whole idea of because I think for me personally, when I think of the word mentor, I used to think it was like somebody who has all of this knowledge putting that onto you, but it's like, I like to believe that everyone has something to learn from each other. So it has to be like a two-way for it to work as a mentorship for me specifically.
That's true. That's true.
I want to ask you a question, but I think I know the answer, but I'm just going to let you tell us. What other creative channels do you use to express yourself?
Wow. Apart from, like, the painting.
Tell us all of them.
Tell us. Like, we don't know. We want to know.
Okay. So I paint. I make cards. I love paper craft. So I'll do cards. I'm trying to separate the stuff I love to do with the business, because the stuff I love to do is also the business. Yeah. But the stuff I love to do is I love to express myself on paper.
Yeah.
And that's mostly like in watercolors. I love how watercolors, I love watercolors to death.
Yes.
You know, I love having creative conversations. Oh, they feed my soul. Yeah. I'd like to say I'm a musician, but I'd be lying. I'm not.
We'll have a segment.
I am, however, fed by music.
What would you call what you are with? Like, I want you to talk about your gardening, because Kanyi, honestly, every time you post, I'm like, okay, I'm growing flowers. starting today. And then it's like, till your next post. Then I'm like, oh, I'm going to grow flowers. So I want you to talk a little bit about that because you really have something going on over there.
Oh wow. So I think I love nurturing anything creative. And for me, gardening, and especially because I have such a special place in my heart for nature, is like second nature for me. And because I don't have a large compound or anything, so I do a lot of container gardening. Yeah, I love growing roses. I love roses. Oh, I've run out of space, but I'm still buying them. And I love hydrangeas. And there's something about the process of growing something and then it flowers and it's healthy, and it just like I said, it feeds your soul. It feeds my soul.
Yeah.
You know, I kill a lot of stuff also. I am an amateur gardener, by the way. If you look at my Instagram, that's the stuff that survived. Right? There's a lot of stuff that died in the process also.
Yeah.
So it's I find it experimental. It's experimental gardening for me,
Yeah.
and I really enjoy it. So I'm always looking for new things and new ways of doing things. And yeah, so I don't know. Yeah, I consider it a journey that I'm doing with a lot of people.
It's
My
very,
audience also.
I'm definitely on that journey with you, even though I'm nowhere close to what you are as a green thumb. But I think every time I see you post a picture of a flower, I always feel like your creative side comes out even without you being cognitive of the fact that it's not just about the flowers. I think it's the creative in you that comes out every time you talk about flowers. I'm like, my gosh, I have to look at these flowers a bit more closely because clearly you see something that some of us take for granted as we walk by or through nature.
Flowers for me are just the embodiment of creation. Because when you look at a flower, there's the color first of all. It is very difficult sometimes to even replicate some of these colors. Funny thing is, I don't like cut roses. So if you're sending me flowers, please don't send me roses. Yeah.
Wow.
But I love grown roses.
Yeah.
I love the color. I love the smell. I love the texture. I love the way sometimes they can grow wild. I'm on the eternal hunt for white climbing roses. So if you've got a plug for that, please hook me up.
White climbing roses.
Yes.
Whoa.
They're very English. They're hard to find here.
Are they tiny or are they like big blooming?
Some are tiny. I'm looking for the medium-sized ones.
Okay.
So the climbing roses that we have here are mostly either red or pink.
Yes.
But white are hard to find. So I have a spot remaining in my garden for them. But I love the process of growing stuff, and I love how it makes me feel, especially if something does well. I kill a lot of the stuff that I grow also, which is why I'm always buying plants.
Yeah.
So, and I'm always getting new ideas. I mean, how I remember you asked me one time how I get motivated or how I think relax. How I relax is I watch YouTube videos on gardening. So like, for instance, if I'm going through a fascination with, let's say, fuchsias, I'll be watching YouTube videos about how to propagate them, the different type of fuchsias there are, the different type of things you can do with them. And then I'm also painting them. And then I go through a whole section of, like, right now I'm doing roses, and I'm loving roses. I'm painting them. I'm growing them. I'm searching for new. Roses have multiple scents. You can get roses that have multiple scents.
Oh yeah.
There's vanilla scented roses. There's some that have a slightly spicy scent.
Oh, yeah?
I didn't even know that.
I did not know
There's
that.
so much to learn from.
I thought they're just
plant
roses.
No, there's literally thousands of things you can learn from them.
Right. I just always admire your gardening and all your gardening posts because I always feel your creative side comes through, even though it's not technically a creative field. But funny enough, when I look back, I used to have a job back in the days in college, and I managed, they called it the floral department of an arts and crafts store. And gardening actually was considered an arts creative thing. Like it's not in a gardening. You know how in Kenya, like they're on the roadside. But in this particular scenario, they were actually inside the shop, next to the wedding stuff, next to the crochet stuff. Like gardening was an art. So clearly your creative side comes out in many ways. But
It's very definitely a creative process. Think about it, like if you have a large garden, the process of designing it, knowing where to put what plants, with structure, height, some are long, some are short, some crawl along the ground, which, putting things together, that's a creative process, man.
It is. There used to be, did you ever go to the botanical gardens?
Oh,
in Atlanta?
No, I went to the New York one actually.
So there was this garden in Atlanta, and I'm sure the New York one was the same. And it basically is what you're saying, a well manicured, amazing picture like garden. And I used to go for the shows, but literally you get lost. Like I would literally get lost staring because they would organize the show so that you went at a time where you could appreciate plants that were nocturnal. So it was like a wine and flowers kind of deal. So you went at around sunset and you got to interact with flowers. Anyway, we're getting this, like, I just admire what you do with flowers, but I think you would love it.
Oh, thank you.
So one of my final questions is, what advice, because we, as she says, are trying to kind of inspire up and coming female creatives. So what advice would you give a young up and coming female creative in Kenya?
First, I'll tell them, don't give up.
Hmm.
Be unreasonable about what you want.
Hmm.
Just because the environment doesn't recognize it doesn't mean it does not have value. Yeah. Create your own path. Just because there's no path doesn't mean you can't do it. Create your own path. Yeah. And that's sometimes easier said than done, especially if you're coming from like an urban setting or something like that. But I believe that it's something that anyone can do. Yeah. It will be harder than for some people than others. But I believe that you can do it. And then, because when you start changing your energy about what's possible, then all sorts of possibilities start coming up. Your teachers appear, your opportunities start showing up, so just don't give up. Don't give up on that thing that makes you inside you. Yeah.
Amazing. One of the things we like to do here is wrap up every episode with 6 rapid fire questions. These questions require a quick response, so no long-winded answers. And so, are you ready? You can find it in you. So our first question is, if you had to be any of these things, which would you like to be? A member of the opposite sex, a clock, a pair of shoes, or a duck? And why?
A member of the opposite sex. The world is your toilet.
Okay.
One thing you would do as a mentor for your younger self?
The advice I just gave, be unreasonable about what you want. I'd be more unreasonable about what I wanted. And I'd be more patient with myself, and I'd be kinder to myself.
When you think about things that you have created, is there something that you hated, but people looked at it and just loved it?
Literally every day.
Okay.
That's a true creative answer right there. The best advice that you have ever been given?
When you change how you look at things change. The things themselves change.
Wow.
So when you change your mindset, everything changes.
Wow. Awesome. What was the biggest opposing force that you encountered on your creative journey so far?
A captive audience.
Wow.
If you could interview a creative person, past or present, who would that be?
Definitely Da Vinci and Dali.
Fantastic. That brings us to the end of this episode. It was so much fun chatting with you.
Right.
Thank you. I think we could go on if we had time, but then it wouldn't be a podcast. It would just be hanging out.
Yeah, I just want to ask you, where can people find you, or where do you want to be found and stalked?
Those are very two distinct questions. So I'm on Instagram as Kanyi Ohawa, as one word, KNYIOHAWA. I also have another Instagram page called Kanyi Watercolors, where I like to put up some of my work. And you can find me also on Kanyi at allandsundryltd.com, which is my official business email.
Oh, where?
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.
Likewise, I think we had all the fun in the world. Sometimes I don't even know what we're trying to accomplish with this podcast, but I think this conversation makes me, at least for me, makes me realize that there's a lot to be said about the creative journey for women in Kenya.
Right.
And the more of these conversations we're able to have, the more we can learn from each other and also be a holding hand to women that are coming up behind us. So thank you very much for sharing your time with us.
Oh, thank you so much. If we can impact the lives of someone, one person at a time, that would be awesome.
Fantastic. Awesome. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your vacation, Miss Diani.
Right.
Thank you.
We'll
I'm
just
now going to remove this and go put on my bikini.
have a fabulous time, and we'll catch you later.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. That was amazing. It was so much fun talking to Kanyi, and I don't know, what did you think?
Yeah, I really, really enjoyed that conversation.
Yeah?
And there was a lot of insights that I got as well.
I know, and I think the one thing that stood out to me is a conversation that I think you and I have had about mentorship, and to realize that, you know, when she says that her mentors are not people who know that they're mentoring her, that's really interesting, because I think we as creative women have not really had a channel through which mentorship is structured, but it's good to see that we still find mentorship in the form that we can. And it also makes me think of how she says we'll serve a space that is currently unoccupied.
Right. And just the whole idea of peer-to-peer mentorship is what I'm really excited about. And it also debunks that whole idea of a mentor is somebody who knows all of this information and just dumps it on you as somebody who's clueless. But it's discovering that idea of, by talking to other Kenyan creative women, we're essentially creating this hub of mentorship.
Right. So yeah, that was pretty awesome. She says Kenya, here we go.
So you can find all the show notes on the Instagram page, She Says Kenya, and all of Kanyi's details will also be put below or in the show notes so that you can go and stalk her and just see all the